everybody, and welcome to this episode of Boxed In, Yahoo Sports' show where we embrace debate. Today's debate on Boxed In comes down to NFL draft classes. I'm Pete Thamel, college football writer for Yahoo Sports, host of the Yahoo Sports College podcast. I am joined by Terez Paylor and Charles Robinson. You know them as Yahoo's duo, who does the Yahoo NFL podcast, and they're also our Yahoo NFL senior reporters. Gentlemen, let's get ready to debate the 1983 draft and the 1989 draft. Because Charles is our veteran expert, he is going to argue the 1989 draft, because he was alive for it. Terez wasn't, but he's still going to argue the 1983 draft, which of course gave us 8 Hall of Famers, 7 of whom popped up in the first round. Let's start with Charles. Charles, why are you going 1989 on us?
I mean, look.
Because he couldn't pick 83.
Well, okay, yeah, we'll start off with that.
Let's be real clear here, guys.
Yeah, I got completely hosed in the selection process here. So when we decided we were going to argue drafts, Terez took about half a second to shout out, "I'll take 83." Yeah, that's how that started. So there's been a little bit of a protest. There may have been a fight between me and our producer, Brett Rader, over this
guys,
via
you
text
missed
message.
An epic Charles temper tantrum about this. It was great.
No, yeah, absolutely. Sure. Okay, so you're setting me up for the L off the bat. That's fine. All right. I'll take 89. I'll take 89. I don't have a problem taking 1989. Because you know what? 1989 provided us the greatest first 5 draft choices in the history of any draft period, let alone the NFL draft. Obviously, Troy Aikman comes off number 1. Tony Mandarich, who I will say is a great pick at number 2, and there's a reason why. We'll get into that later in the show. At number 2, Barry Sanders, Derek Thomas.
Wait a minute. Do we have to call a timeout for the Michigan State Charles Robinson bias already showing up?
We will get.
Right.
We'll
I mean,
you're
gonna work Tom Izzo in this draft too. Like,
let's not.
Tony Mandarich being a good pick. It's the most ridiculous argument I've ever heard.
Let's not jump ahead to my methodology here, all right?
No.
I'm already taking the L on the selection of the draft as it is. Number 5 in this draft, Deion Sanders. That is a hell of a top 5. I'll break it down later in the show. We can get to that. But that's 4 Hall of Famers off the board in the top 5 picks. And not only 4 Hall of Famers off the board in the top 5 picks, we're talking about guys who represented Super Bowls. We're talking about guys who defined their positions, guys like Barry Sanders, Deion Sanders, Derek Thomas, one of the greatest pass rushers in NFL history, and who may be the greatest pass rusher in NFL history had his career not been cut tragically short. That top 5, I think, is going to preserve 1989 as being the best NFL draft ever.
Terez, you rigged the deck already here. Give your count. Give your counter for 1983.
I appreciate the moderator making sure everybody knows that the deck was rigged right off the bat. So go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Terez.
Well, great. Well, now I get to approach this like the Falcons in the Super Bowl. I'm up 28-3. I just have to not lose the game. I actually like your point, Charles. Like, let me just say that. If I'm you, I'm definitely hammering home Deion and Barry and Derek Thomas. That's like 3 players that were not just like badasses, but like they like defined and cultivated a love of football for like a generation, like an entire generation of fans. Like that's what you hit home on. So that's a strong start. And I'm going to impassionately argue against it because there's no real argument to that. And this is hard for me because I love Deion and I loved Barry. But 1983 by far is the greatest draft of all time. Again, 7 first rounders became Hall of Famers. These were our iconic guys. John Elway, iconic player, won a Super Bowl. Eric Dickerson had upright running style that a lot of players tried to emulate. Jimbo Covert was a bedrock on the 85 Bears. Bruce Matthews, a testament to strength and versatility and durability as an offensive tackle. Jim Kelly, Dan Marino, Darrell Green, and the great Richard Dent. For there to be 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks here, that's insane. That's insane in this first round. All those guys left the impact on the game. I'll also add one more thing to this. There are a lot of players in this draft that like seriously contributed to like some iconic teams of our time. This draft happened a year before I was born, but like a lot of the players in this draft like also helped cultivate my love of football. So like Jim Jeffcoat, who nobody really thinks of, was actually a really good player on the 91 Cowboys. Already mentioned for the Bears, Richard Dent. They also drafted in 83, and this is an unbelievable draft for the Bears. Dave Duerson, Willie Gault, Covert as well. Remember I mentioned him, and Mike Richardson. All those guys were key on the 85 Bears. And then Charles Mann from the Redskins. We know they had a run there. And Jesse Sapalu and Roger Craig from the 49ers. It's just on and on and on. So many great players in this draft contributed to great teams from our lifetime.
So, Terez, you have clearly dispirited Charles, which is not that difficult to do, as any of his Yahoo colleagues can say. So I'm going to play a little reverse psychology here. Charles, go into Terez's draft, pick out the 2 or 3 biggest busts, and undercut his argument.
I don't even have to do that to undercut his argument. He's approaching this all wrong. Okay, I know you want me to go to the busts, but I'm going to start with Terez having a bust of an argument. Okay, everyone is watching right now.
That's the only recourse you have.
Okay, that's fine. I'll approach this any way I can. I'll Bill Belichick this. I'll figure out a way to win, no matter what I have to do here. Trump card. Okay, so let me go. I'm gonna approach this from a Belichick standpoint. Terez is taking the straight line argument. There's no wiggle here. He's just saying, hey, here are the great players. Here are the Hall of Famers. Here are the teams. That's what makes this a great draft. That's not what makes a great draft. That's not what we remember. That's not what we remember. The draft is its own animal, okay? It's not just about talent. It's about the show. It's about the pageantry. It's about the storylines and the drama. So let me give you why 1989 completely eclipses the talent of Terez's draft, okay? Tony Mandrich at number 2.
Oh my God, I can't believe this.
We use a term now in every single draft that we owe to Tony Mandrich. The draft bust was defined and birthed by Tony Mandrich coming off the board, number 2 to the Green Bay Packers, ahead of Barry Sanders, ahead of Derek Thomas, ahead of Deion Sanders. He became what we now use the term bust. We use it all the time. Every draft bust. We look backwards, biggest draft bust. We look forward, who's going to be the guy who busts? Tony Mandrich created it. The guy who was supposed the Sports Illustrated cover boy, the supposed greatest left tackle who was ever going to be drafted, ever, holding the manhole cover, okay? He ends up crowning himself as the bust. We use it forever. So there's number 1. That's amazing that we actually got a
so
term. So
you are using the bust to your advantage.
Right. He's trying to weaponize the bust.
Yes, I am weaponizing the bust. I am weaponizing the fact that a cornerstone draft term, and I would argue even the greatest draft term ever created. We use the term draft bust more than anything else in relation to the draft ever. We use draft bust more. Search draft bust on Google, and you will see more returns, more hits on Google than any other draft-related phrase that contains 2 words. Draft bust. Okay, so there you go. Number 1. I am weaponizing Tony Mandrich, the draft bust, as being part of what makes this great. We'll go beyond that. Okay, we want to get into the talent. Hey, listen, I understand the talent. You know, I can go in again about Barry Sanders. As Terez did it for me. Deion Sanders defined something beyond football. You're right. Derek Thomas defined something beyond football. Barry Sanders, other than Gale Sayers, you cannot find another player in NFL history who even looks like Barry Sanders on the field in what he did. Okay, so great. There's all that. Okay. We can talk about all the talent. I'm not going to bore you with all the talent. Hey, Eric Metcalf, Dave Meggett, 2 of the greatest returners in NFL history. All of that. I'm going to give you another great storyline out of this. Steve Atwater, again, another Hall of Famer. That's the 5th Hall of Famer, by the way, in this class. Quintessential safety. How many NFL hits tapes were sold by Steve Atwater alone? That guy created the NFL hit tape himself. Okay, so there you go. Beyond that, this is very important. Andre Rison, over 10,000 yards receiving, over 80 touchdown receptions. Only man to have his entire mansion burned down by his rapper girlfriend in TLC. Left eye, lit the shoes on fire in the bathtub and burned his house down. He's weaponizing a man's house burning down. I am pulling out everything I can. That is what makes this draft great. You have a guy who coins the term draft bust in what he became in the NFL, and then you have a guy who had his mansion burned down by his girlfriend when she lit his tennis shoes on fire. That alone, those two storylines are worth this being the greatest draft ever.
We clearly work at a place where we go for clicks, considering how Charles's arguments are engineered when he mentions TLC and then the biggest bust of all time. As positives. As positives for the 89 argument. Terez, would you like to fillet Mr. Robinson's argument?
The three of us who are sitting here right now, there's not one of us who, out of all the stories in this, would not go, I'll write this story about the guy whose house got burned down by his girl.
No, we'd all race to do
it. Absolutely. We would all reach for that one. Every single one of us, we would scramble for that story.
It's a good argument.
I'd come off vacation for that story.
Yeah. It's a good argument, and it's one that I just cannot allow our readers and our listeners to fall into this trap. At the end of the day, we are arguing the best draft of all time. And there's nothing like the real thing. When you just have the goods, people who just have the goods, they just kind of have a wall. They don't have to fake it. They don't have to force it. If you got the goods, you got the goods. So I don't have to try to concoct some pageantry argument. But if I did want to match you on that, I would mention that there hasn't been a killer 30 for 30 on the 1989 draft. There has been on 83. Elway to Marino is incredible. By the way, from a playing standpoint, my draft had everything. Killer quarterbacks, killer running backs, a killer cornerback in Darrell Green, even a pass rusher. Like every important position in pro football, this draft produced a Hall of Famer for it. And here's the last thing. Pete, you're the judge. I'm going to make this appeal directly to you. Our argument is about the best draft of all time. I went and found the numbers. The 1983 draft produced 41 first-team All-Pro selections, 144 Pro Bowl seasons, and 743 seasons where players in this draft were the starter for their team. 1989, 25 first-team All-Pro selections, 89 Pro Bowls, 546 seasons. By literally every measure, my draft was superior. I ask that you don't fall for the okie doke and that you just look at this thing logically, do what Bill Belichick would do, choose the best, call it a day.
Closing argument, Charles Robinson, give me your best draft hidden gem.
Well, unfortunately, I have to tell you, Terez has got Richard Dent. I think he was an 8th round pick, Hall of Famer in the 1983 draft. And again, I cannot deny the greatness of the 1983 draft. It's hard for me to overcome. My draft, again, I think the hidden gem. I'm going to keep going back to the Tony Mandrich story. The incredible bulk. The incredible bulk.
He's just hammering it home.
Yes.
I think Charles is tanking. He's hoping for a high pick in the next episode of Boxed In. The process that Charles is using right now is probably not going to end up being an effective one.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll be talking about draft busts for the next 5 decades in the NFL. And you know what? My guy, Tony Mandrich, was the one who defined it. He began it. I think that alone is worthy of making the 1989 NFL draft the best draft ever, particularly when you aren't allowed to choose the 1983 NFL draft because someone got to it before you.
Well, okay.
Terez, close us out.
Terez wins this because he could talk faster. He went faster than me when we picked.
You're talking about all this immaterial stuff. We have narrowed this down to a very simple scenario where we're picking the best draft. Now, you want to look at this or that or whatever. The fact is that I got that and I'm arguing it. And I'll even give you, Pete, a hidden gem that's not Richard Dent. Carl Mecklenburg was a 12th round pick of the Denver Broncos, a 6-time Pro Bowler. He was a 4-time first-team All-Pro selection. He has a Hall of Fame case. I'm just saying, a 12th round pick, a guy who played in Super Bowls, that's pretty damn good.
So we come to the climactic conclusion of this episode of Boxed In. I have 2 rulings. One is Terez Paylor is our winner.
Yes.
And the other is I'm indicting him on insider trading counts because he clearly gamed the game by picking the vast superior draft. We all know Charles Robinson isn't running a 4.340, so he's not the fastest guy in the world. But Terez was quick on the draw. Terez is your winner. Charles, your Sam Hinkie reverse psychology tanking does not work on Boxed In. You need to win straight up. Terez Paylor, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so honored. This is exactly what I planned.
No one's ever going to recognize this championship. Illegitimate. Completely illegitimate.
Until the SEC comes calling for your insider trading allegations, enjoy your banner. That's all for Boxed In. Tune in every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for a new argument, a new winner, and a new judgment here at Yahoo Sports.